PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. And on this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub, we are going to be discussing the Tahoe Night Monsters, the ECHL affiliate of your Vegas Golden Knights. So since it is the middle of the week and there is no hockey action going on right now, we decided that we're going to, pivot a little bit, and we're going to take a focus on the new and most recent minor league affiliate to join the Vegas Golden Knights organization. We're going to talk about Tahoe, kind of establish who they are, and maybe go through the roster a little bit and talk about some notable players and any notable names that you may recognize or people that you should probably know. So it's going to be a fun episode talking about the ECHL and the newest affiliate for the Vegas Golden Knights. And we're going to talk about all of this on this episode of Vegas Hockey Hub. Now, before we get into the ECHL and talk about Tahoe, I want to very quickly shout out our social medias. Follow us on social media on YouTube at Vegas Hockey Hub. Click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any episode of Vegas Hockey Hub. Go to the PR Connections Radio YouTube channel, like the video, and share this video to all your friends all around the world. On Facebook, go to at Vegas Hockey Hub and at our PR Connections. Like those videos and share it to all the groups and all the pages that you know. On Instagram, go to at Vegas Hockey Hub, where we upload content to events that we are attending and events that we are going to. And considering what's going on in the future, there is plenty of stuff we are going to be doing the next couple of months on this channel and on that Instagram channel. So go to our Instagram at Vegas Hockey Hub. Go to our Twitter at Vegas Hockey Hub. We do live tweets. We tweet during the game while it's going on. We try to engage with all of our fan base and everyone who's watching all around the world. So that is at Vegas Hockey Hub. We also have our TikTok at Vegas Hockey Hub, where we try to upload, if there's warm-ups that we're attending, or if there's events that we are at that is Vegas Golden Knights or Henderson Silver Knights related. That is our TikTok at Vegas Hockey Hub. And we have our website, www.vegashockeyhub.com, trying to put more content on that platform. So there is a lot to really talk about on this show tonight. Now, to establish what this team is, the Lake Tahoe Night Monsters. Now, very recently, about over a year ago, the ECHL granted an expansion team. They're expanding the ECHL, and the Vegas Golden Knights' newest ECHL affiliate was a part of that. As the Tahoe Night Monsters out there in State Line, Nevada, near Lake Tahoe, they were granted that expansion team, and we're going to be the newest member. And look, it's good. I mean, definitely, as somebody who remembers the good old days of the Las Vegas Wranglers being part of the ECHL, this meant that this new ECHL team was going to have some reignited rivalries with some teams that used to play Las Vegas back in the day. I'm talking about the Idaho Steelheads. I'm talking about the Utah Grizzlies. There's going to be some teams in the ECHL that are going to sound familiar to people who were part of the Las Vegas Wranglers or are familiar with what Las Vegas Wranglers were in the most recent tenure of having a Nevada team in the ECHL. Now, when it comes to the Tahoe Night Monsters, this was only about a year after, even though it was kind of obvious for anybody who connected the dots, but it was official during the summer of 2024 that the Vegas Golden Knights and the Henderson Silver Knights would be that affiliate to the Tahoe Night Monsters. And this is really good for Vegas in terms of travel-wise. Having all three teams in the same state means that at the most, you're going to have only a couple of hours in between where those affiliates are going to be. If a person goes from Henderson to Tahoe, they can have that access there. If they go from Tahoe to Henderson, then Henderson to Vegas, and then Vegas to Henderson. So there is some, there's going to be some in terms of mileage, in terms of the airfare, in terms of all of that. It's not going to cost as much as it was when the Vegas Golden Knights had an ECHL team in Indiana, as much as it was if they had a team in Illinois, or if they had a team out there that was in Georgia. Like, you go from having an ECHL team that was in the Midwest and in the South, and now you have one that is in the same state, so the mileage is not going to be as much. And when it comes to the staff of the Tahoe Night Monsters, it was announced a while back that Alex Lowe, L-O-H, would be the head coach of Tahoe. Now, if that name does sound familiar, or if anybody does remember the Savannah Ghost Pirates from a year prior, then his name would make sense, as he was originally an assistant coach in Savannah, and then after they fired the head coach in the middle of the season, he would be promoted to be the interim head coach out there in Savannah. So he essentially goes from being the interim head coach in Savannah and gets carried over, more or less, over to Tahoe and becomes the permanent head coach here. So even though Savannah is going to have a new affiliate, even though Savannah is going to have a new team in the NHL, Alex Lowe is going to be the permanent head coach here. And considering his experience, I mean, he went from being, a video coach in the AHL to then being an associate coach, an assistant coach in the ECHL. He was a head coach a while back before becoming an assistant coach once again. So with his experience and almost a decade of experience that he has in the ECHL as a coach in hockey, that is going to be some valuable knowledge that Tahoe has. And when it comes to his coaching, it seems like there's going to be some players who are going to be familiar with him because of the fact that he was the interim coach last year in Savannah. Vegas is going to be carrying over some players who are under contract with Vegas but are in the ECHL. There's only going to be a handful of those guys, but they're still going to have some familiarity with the coach because he is the interim guy from the past season. And then on the assistant coach side, and this one was announced just before the regular season and before they started doing their training camps, before they do any of that stuff, Brett Boeing, who was a former ECHL player. He spent a couple of seasons in Toledo, actually no longer, and he is now joining a coaching staff in the ECHL and would be the assistant to Alex Lowe out there in Tahoe. So when it comes to Brett Boeing, this is going to be a guy who does have that experience. And because he was in the ECHL, not only just 2 years prior, he's going to have that recency. He's going to have that experience and kind of know, the ECHL on a kind of inner level because he had been there recently in the ECHL. And now another part of the Tahoe Night Monsters. We talked about the coaching staff. We talked about how, they're starting to get into here, how they're an expansion team in the ECHL. But what about the players itself? Now, I understand that not everybody is going to be familiar with who's going to be on the roster. And I understand that there's going to be players who are going to be signed to just ECHL deals. They're not going to be with the Vegas Golden Knights. They're not going to be with the Henderson Silver Knights unless they're on a loan or they're on a PTO, okay? But when it comes to the Tahoe Night Monsters, this is going to be a situation where it's about to be a 60-40 situation. 60% of these guys are going to be signed to just the ECHL. They're going to play in just the ECHL, and that's the way the roster is going to be. And then the other 40% are going to be draft picks that the Vegas Golden Knights have had. They're going to be two-way contracts that are going to be between Henderson and going to be between Tahoe. And then that other 40% is going to account for rehab assignments. Let's say it's somebody in Henderson gets hurt and they don't want them to, and they want them to, kind of rehab and have a rehab assignment. They'll have them play a game or two or maybe a few games in the ECHL, and then they will come back to Henderson. Very similar to how in the NHL, we see guys who get injured, they come over to the AHL to play a game or two, and then they eventually get brought back up. That's going to kind of be the same ordeal there. Now, the way that we are going to kind of break this down in terms of roster is that the Tahoe Night Monsters, as of, this date, this is a team that currently has 15 players that are signed to ECHL deals. There's 15 players that are just going to be ECHL guys. And then the rest of the roster, the other 8, are going to be on the Vegas Golden Knights side. So to kind of make this easy for Vegas Hockey Hub is that we're going to cover the 8 players who are going to be part of the Vegas Golden Knights side of it. And then if we have time, we will talk about the remaining 15. And if there's any notable players or people that you would know who are from those 15 that are with the Tahoe Night Monsters. And the one position that is going to have the Vegas Golden Knights affiliate the most is going to be goaltending. And based off of the roster that we have in front of us, the way the Vegas Golden Knights and the Henderson Silver Knights are going to be, at Henderson, you're going to have Carl Lindbaum, you're going to have Isaiah Seville, and you are going to have Jesper Beckman, for example. That looks like what's going to be on the AHL side with Henderson. On the NHL side, you have Aiden Hill, you have Ilya Samsonov, and you have Akira Schmid. So for the ECHL side, the one notable goaltender that is going to be here is Jordan Propierny. Now, this is a guy who has split time between the AHL and the ECHL throughout his tenure with the Vegas Golden Knights. And based off of what we've seen him do over the past 2 seasons, it is a very safe bet to say that he is going to spend time in the ECHL and he is going to be in the Tahoe Night Monster system. He's going to be a goaltender that is going to spend time here. Now, for the Henderson goaltenders that are also going to be involved, I have no doubt that you're going to see maybe a Jesper Beckman. You're going to have him be part of the Tahoe Night Monsters. Isaiah Seville, considering the Henderson-Tahoe connection there. I mean, when it comes to the goaltending, there is going to be goaltenders that are going to split time between the ECHL and the AHL, and that's going to be a good quality for the Vegas Golden Knights, is that if there is a backup goaltender in the AHL that does need some starts and isn't going to get a lot of it in the AHL, they can recall him and send him down to the ECHL, and he'll be the starting goaltender there, and he will get his appropriate amount of starts instead of just not playing in the AHL. And like I alluded to before, let's say that there's a goaltender who gets hurt in the AHL and he gets put on a rehab assignment to the ECHL. So when it comes to the goaltending, like I mentioned, there's going to be some goaltenders of note that you're going to want to talk about. I did talk about Carl Lindbaum, Jesper Beckman, Isaiah Seville, Jordan Propierny. Like, there's going to be those guys that are going to be on that list that is going to take advantage of having an AHL and ECHL team in the same state when it comes to Tahoe. Now, the goaltending is a part of it, and 2 of those 8 players are going to be assigned from Vegas and are going to be in Tahoe. All right, so 2 of the goaltenders are going to be there. Highly unlikely that the Tahoe Night Monsters would have a full-time goaltender that's going to play every single game that doesn't have at least some affiliation with the Vegas Golden Knights. And the reason why we know this is because based on that list of the 14 15 players that the Tahoe Night Monsters are going to have signed to ECHL deals. None of them are goaltenders. Now, they did have somebody on a PTO that was a goaltender, but, PTOs are a game or two, giving them a tryout more or less. But when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, that's really what it's looking like at the moment, is that they're going to have two of their guys. It could be a veteran and a young guy, or two young guys, prospect, whatever it is. But the Tahoe Night Monsters, two of those goaltenders are going to be from Henderson and or prospects of the Vegas Golden. Now, on the defensive end of the Tahoe Night Monsters, they have six defensemen who are signed under contract with the ECHL. And because they have those six guys, they already are signed to the Tahoe Night Monsters. That would be the assumption that there isn't going to be much representation when it comes to Vegas Golden Knights prospects. There's not going to be much in terms of Henderson and Tahoe interaction. But there is actually going to be two defensemen that are going to have at least some two-way deal, or are at least going to spend some time in the ECHL and or the AHL at some point. The first one is Arthur Kolosh. Now, this is a defenseman who has spent a reasonable amount of time in the minor league system with the Vegas Golden Knights. He's been at development camps. He's been at training camps. And him being on the opening day roster with Tahoe, him playing games at Tahoe, playoffs, that would be a situation there. This is going to be a player that if there is, an AHL, ECHL situation, this would be someone who is going to be a mainstay on the ECHL roster, who was assigned from Henderson or assigned from Vegas. So that would be a defenseman that would have some representation from the Vegas Golden Knights on the ECHL end. And then you have Sam Mayer. And Sam Mayer is someone who has spent time in the ECHL, another young up-and-coming guy who is going to be playing and getting some time in the ECHL. This is a guy who, is really trying to earn his way in the Vegas Golden Knights organization. So despite having six defensemen who are signed to ECHL contracts and are going to be in Tahoe pretty much exclusively, you're going to have two players that are going to be, represented from the Vegas Golden Knights. So I mentioned that there's going to be two goaltenders that are going to be added to this team from Vegas. And then you're going to have at least two defensemen that are going to come from Henderson or going to come from the prospect pool of Vegas, and they are going to be added to this team. So if we've done the math real quick, we have those 14 players that are signed to ECHL contracts, the two goalies, that would make it 16, and then the two defensemen will make it 18. So you have six players left, and I think you can probably figure out by now what position we are going to be focusing on next. Now, when it comes to the Henderson Silver Knights, their bottom six forwards, or guys who are going to be healthy scratches in Henderson, they are then going to get optioned down to the ECHL. They are going to then become top six, middle six forwards in the ECHL. And one player that kind of is an indicator of that would be the first one on this list, and that is Bear Hughes. Now, Bear Hughes did split time between the Savannah Ghost Pirates and the Henderson Silver Knights. But this is also going to be a guy who's going to play a few games in Henderson throughout the year, but he's going to play majority of his season in the ECHL. And in terms of numbers, he is actually a very credible player in the ECHL. He's going to be an everyday guy that the Vegas Golden Knights and their prospect pool and their system out here in the ECHL are going to use. So for Bear Hughes, he would be the first player on that list that's really going to catch your eye, because he did play a few games in the Henderson Silver Knights in the AHL, But at this point, this is his second season, playing in the AHL, full-time member, and that is what Bear Hughes is going to be. It's going to be kind of similar to Jet Jones. Jet Jones, who's the second name on that list of players from the Vegas Golden Knights / Henderson Silver Knights system that are going to be playing in the ECHL. And when it comes to Jet Jones, a similar story. Yes, he can play some games in Henderson. He has, but he will spend a majority of his campaign playing in the ECHL. But what makes him stand out is his production. He is one of the most productive players that you're going to have in Tahoe. And only reason why I know this is because when you look at his stat line, all right, when you study Jet Jones, for example, this is someone who he's been in the ECHL a few games, 2 years ago. Then he had about half the year, in the previous year before that. And then he gets to play majority of the season here. And this is someone who you can get a recent amount of goals from in Jet Jones. And what I like about him, and this is from Hockey Reference, who I use a lot for my research, Jet Jones is a guy who's only 23 years old, but this is a player who, if you look at his accomplishments and his statistics, this is going to be someone who's entering his third season being in the Vegas Golden Knights organization. And despite not being signed, despite not being, he was not drafted by the Vegas Golden Knights, him being on that third year, he is someone who is credible and someone the Vegas Golden Knights could use in that capacity. So Bear Hughes is the first one that's on that list of forwards that are going to have that AHL, ECHL situation. Jet Jones is going to be another guy on there. And then you have a guy that was on the prospect pool for the Vegas Golden Knights, and that is a defenseman converted into a forward, and that is Joe Fleming. Joe Fleming, who can drop the gloves, and oh my, yes, he can. He is going to be a mainstay in the ECHL for a while. This is a player that when you watch him play, regardless if it's a few games in the AHL or a full season in the ECHL, this is someone in Joe Fleming who you can count on to defend his teammates. He's going to finish his checks, and he will drop the gloves if he has to. And the reason why we know this is because when it goes to Joe Fleming, this is someone who has, over 100 penalty minutes in the previous year that he was in Savannah. He had over 100 penalty minutes, and he did rack up a decent amount of points too. So overall, when it comes to Joe Fleming, you're going to see him be part of that ECHL roster. You're going to see him be part of that. Now, do I think that he'll also spend some time in the AHL? Absolutely. He will be a guy that you'll see in Henderson, but you also will see in Tahoe. Very similar to Bear Hughes and Jet Jones. They're going to split some time. You're going to see their stats on both stat lines. If you go to the Silver Knights website or if you go to the Night Monsters website, both of those, all three of them are going to be there. The last two players that are going to have affiliation with the Vegas Golden Knights that are going to be in with the Tahoe Night Monsters, this is a player who they have a lot of potential. All right, the first one that I'm going to mention real quick is Simeon Pinard. And this is a guy who scored over 20 goals with the Savannah Ghost Pirates. He will score a 25-goal season. And I understand this is the ECHL. I know that, for most people, they are not going to really care about a guy who could score over 25 goals in a season, over 30 goals in a season in the ECHL as an everyday guy. But I also want to remind you that this is a guy in Simeon Pinard who played around a dozen games in the AHL and then played majority of the season in the ECHL. And this is a guy who's racking up 40, 50 points in the ECHL. This is an undrafted player. All right, he was not drafted by the Vegas Golden Knights. They signed him as an undrafted free agent. And this is, year 2 of him being in the Golden Knights organization. And in terms of goal scoring, in terms of prospect watch, I even alluded to Simeon Pennard in one of our recent prospect shows we did a few months ago. And I said that he was a guy to watch, just like Joe Fleming, who is a defenseman in the AHL and sometimes a forward in the ECHL. He is someone you have to watch out for, because Simeon Pennard could be a good middle six forward in the AHL if given the opportunity, because we've seen him be a great goal scorer and a good point differentiator out there in the ECHL. Now, the final player and the standout guy here in the ECHL is Sloan Stanek. This is a player who is very undervalued in the ECHL. And the reason why I say that is because this is his first season being in the ECHL. This is going to be a guy that, he might be a bottom six forward in select games in the AHL, but him being his first year with the Golden Knights organization, he is going to be an everyday player in the ECHL. And considering the amount of goals that he scored in Prince Albert, all right, him spending all that time in the Western Hockey League, this is a legit goal scorer. Just for reference, this is a Hockey DB that I'm using. He had back-to-back 30-goal seasons in the Western Hockey League. Now, him going over to the ECHL, is it expected that he is going to score over 30 goals in a season? Well, it's possible. If you understand the point production that he did in juniors, he could pull off that pace in the ECHL. And once he does, that could earn him the promotion to the AHL. I have no doubt in my mind that this guy, being an all-star caliber player and someone who is going to make a name for himself, if you just watched him play at Prince Albert, when his name popped up that he was with the Golden Knights organization, it took notice, because this was a player who put up some commendable numbers in the Western Hockey League. Now he is playing with the Golden Knights organization. And in a way, very similar to Patrick Gay, who was a few years removed from a couple of years ago, this is going to be a player that put up some commendable numbers in junior hockey. Now he is going to be in the minors with the Vegas Golden Knights. So Sloan Stanek, that is going to be a guy that you are going to watch out for in the ECHL. When it comes to the Tahoe Night Monsters, this is going to be a situation where goaltending-wise, you're going to have, you have 14 players who are signed to ECHL contracts. Then you have your 2 goalies who are going to come from the Golden Knights system, Jordan Papirny and Jesper Beckman. Those are going to be those 2 guys. Defensively, you're going to have Arthur Kulach, and you're going to have Sam Mayer. And then you're going to have 5 forwards who are going to kind of be on two-way deals. Bear Hughes, Jet Jones, Joe Fleming, Simeon Pennard, and Sloan Stanek. And that's going to be the guys that are going to be at least somewhat affiliated with the ECHL and the AHL. Or they're going to be on a prospect watch and going to be ranked on the prospects here with the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, with about a minute left here on the show, I did say that if there was any player who is signed to ECHL contract that I did want to mention, I would do it now. And that one player I do want to mention is forward Luke Adam. Now, Luke Adam, he is a veteran forward. He was drafted by the Buffalo Sabres back in 2008. He has played all over the world, and the veteran forward is here in Tahoe as that veteran leadership type of role. So it's kind of cool to see a guy who was drafted all those years ago to still be an active presence, and he's going to be that veteran role in the ECHL. So Luke Adam would be the notable name signed to an ECHL contract with the Tahoe Night Monsters. So this is Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. And until next time, go Night Monsters, go!
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.